Welcome to the Power Selling Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Crawford, the Power Selling Mom, and today's episode is sponsored by List Perfectly. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Diana Petrillo. She is a personal friend in addition to a very special lady that knows her stuff about antiques. Diana is the founder of Adirondack Girl Heart. It is a business that teaches antique lovers how to create successful antique businesses that they love. She's bought and sold antiques for over 25 years and has created numerous guides to help antique sellers grow their business. You can find her selling vintage goods in numerous places, publishing articles, and they're all about antiques and online selling in addition to local selling. You can find them on her blog, AdirondackGirlHeart.com, and sharing her latest vintage finds on YouTube. Her vintage do-it-yourself projects have been featured in, are you ready for this? Country Sampler and Farmhouse Style magazines, and First for Women magazine wrote an article about her and her business a few years ago. So without further ado, thanks everyone for joining us. Let's get started. Here we have Miss Diana Petrillo. Okay, so I'm just so happy to get started. Please tell us, how long have you been in the antique business and how did you get started?
I've been in the business for a very long time, over 25 years. I got started shortly after I got married, and as we were starting our family, my really, really close friend, Robin, was an antique seller. And she thought that I would be good at it. She knew I loved antiques, and she also had like insight into the fact that I would need something on the side to do to keep me busy and to give me a little break, from all the kid things. So she got me started in the business. I went to a couple of antique shows with her, and she taught me some things about selling. She promptly moved away.
Oh,
But by then I had caught the bug, and I really jumped in. I was pregnant with my son at the time, my first, but I did some antique shows, and then I got into an antique mall.
oh,
I started with a large shelf in the antique mall, and then graduated to a booth, and then on to a larger booth. And I've been doing that pretty much ever since. We lived in England for a couple of years, so I didn't sell for those 2 years, but when we got back, I got right back into it. And then 10 years ago, I started writing a blog. It was kind of like back in those days, I thought of it like kind of a diary, talking about what I was doing, today, or occasionally what I was selling or what I was buying. But within a few years, I really honed in on antiques and started writing about different antiques like ironstone or baskets or enamelware. And then I started writing about how to sell and where to sell. And I also wrote about vintage projects, like upcycling certain vintage things into other things and selling those from my antique booth. And so that's how I got started.
wow. That's amazing. That's quite a journey that you've been on. And you were like a blogger before they called it blogs then.
Well, not really, but close. I don't know. Were you blogging before me, Dana?
No, I don't think so. I think I was writing articles, but we didn't really call it blogging. So it was like articles to feed our websites. but
Yes.
we didn't really call them blogs then.
Well, I try to actually now refer to it as a website and writing articles because people, I think, have an idea in their head that a blog really is a diary
Uh-huh.
or a diary sort of thing. And my Adirondack Girl Heart is the name of my blog. And it's really, like I said, more of a website filled with like tools that people can use to help them grow their antique businesses.
Yes, your website has some amazing information. So, how did your name come about, Adirondack Girl?
I'm from Peru, New York, which is a very small town near the Canadian border. And part of the town is in the Adirondacks. My father is from the Adirondacks, and so we spent a lot of time there growing up. And yeah, I love the mountains, love being outside.
That's wonderful. I know my first reaction was the chair, the classic Adirondack chair. So,
Yep, yep.
I'm not familiar with the mountains, but that's a beautiful community, a beautiful area,
Oh yeah. Oh, it's gorgeous. It's just one my favorite place.
loaded with antiques. All right, so tell me, where do you sell your antiques?
So I'm a little bit like you, Dana, only not quite as good at it.
Oh, yes.
You are the queen of selling. Um, I sell in an antique booth in an antique mall. I sell on Etsy and a little bit on eBay and on Facebook Marketplace. And occasionally I will sell on Instagram. I'm kind of always like testing the waters
Hmm.
primarily because I want to be able to help my readers, help my followers. I have the website. I also have a very large Facebook group and also a newsletter that I send out weekly. And I have a YouTube channel. So my purpose or my function is to try and help people, like I said, with their selling. So I tried to keep my toe in, a number of different platforms.
Okay. So is Adirondack Girl, can you be found across all of the social and YouTube? Is it under that logo, that brand?
Yep, Adirondack Girl at Heart. And
Perfect.
also, I have a course that teaches how to sell on those four of those platforms: the antique booth, Etsy, eBay, and Facebook Marketplace. I'm in the process right now of revamping it,
Okay.
and it'll be available on Etsy shortly.
Oh, on Etsy. Direct,
Yeah, I was on Teachable.
right?
And they recently really increased their prices and
Okay.
reduced their services basically.
Okay.
And I realized that I had chosen Teachable because I needed a cash register, basically, and a place to do landing pages. I now have a way to do landing pages very easily on my website,
Okay.
and I have a large, basically, on whatever platform you use to do courses or digital products, you, as the author, the creator, need to drive the traffic there yourself.
Yes.
People do not find you on Teachable because they're looking for a course about antiques. So I can drive my traffic anywhere to any cash register. I can send them to Teachable or I can send them to Etsy. I
Okay.
like Etsy, and ultimately it costs way much less
Sure.
than Teachable does. So I just tested it out. I think it was in September. I had a new product. The thing with Etsy is you can't create a course that you interact with in the same way that you
Okay.
do on Teachable.
Okay.
So I had to make what would I would normally have made a course. I made it into a PDF,
Okay.
and that
That's a
wasn't really
downloadable.
downloadable. Yeah. So I did a guide on canning jars, teaching about the history of,
Okay.
different canning jars. And then I had a whole, price guide about, probably, I don't know, maybe like 100 different canning jars, and
Mhm,
made the landing page on my website, drove the
mhm.
traffic to Etsy, and it did very well.
Oh, I love that.
Worked
Thank you.
perfectly.
Thank you for sharing that. I
Sure.
think that's a really good opportunity for people that like to do ebooks or PDFs, any
Yep.
kind of teachable kind of information. Um, yeah, I'd like to point out for those of you that are using List Perfectly that you can still you can still upload your information into Etsy. Can't right now include a PDF file into your List Perfectly catalog. So the workaround is to complete your listing on List Perfectly, and then when you cross post it over to Etsy, then upload your PDF. So I just wanted to let people know that the List Perfectly users can still sell PDFs on Etsy that way.
Okay. You just list it through Etsy. Put the PDF when you do your listing on Etsy.
Right, when you finalize it,
Yeah.
because they always let you finalize on each platform before it goes live. So when you create your listing on List Perfectly, and then when you cross post it to Etsy, then you can upload your PDF. Okay, so fill us in on what antiques are selling right now. What's trending?
Well, I want to preface that by just mentioning that the antique business has downturned after
Oh,
9/11 and
okay.
downturned again after the recession of 2008. So even, before 9/11, it wasn't that easy to figure out what people were looking for. And now it's just exponentially harder, I feel anyway, to determine what people are looking for. But that's part of what I try to do, is to keep an eye on trends. So, for example, I will buy a lot of one item thinking that it may sell well, and then try to sell it, and try to sell
Mhm,
it on different platforms to see where it might sell best. And so I'll
mhm,
write different articles about that specifically. But some of the things that I will almost always buy when I'm out, vintage shopping, are Christmas, vintage and antique Christmas, good quality costume jewelry that is attractive. Just
okay.
because it's signed doesn't mean that someone's going to buy it. It's got to be signed and attractive. Um, Flower frogs sell fantastically for me, especially on Etsy. I'm just looking at my notes.
Yes.
Tools sell really well. I find that anything that men like to buy, not anything, a lot of things that men collect sell well, because for whatever reason, men are more willing to spend money on their collections than a lot of women are.
Oh, interesting.
So, so tools, um, small furniture. I do have large furniture pieces in my antique mall, in my antique booth, but small pieces are just going to sell faster. Um, Cookbooks sell
Oh,
really well for me. The nicer ones, or the more valuable ones, I tend to sell on eBay,
okay.
but others through my antique booth. Also, a very weird and specific thing that I am always looking for is handwritten recipe books or recipe journals.
Really
Yeah, I did an article about them on my website. They sell super great on Etsy, and so
interesting.
that kind of got me into trying out handwritten recipe cards, and they
Oh,
sell really well too. So now I look for vintage recipe boxes, and I fill them with handwritten recipe cards. Vintage,
yeah, of
genuine. I'm
course.
not writing them myself.
Right, right. Scribble, scribble.
Yeah, right. So, they sell really well. I also find, interestingly, that cookbooks that have handwritten notes in them and cutouts from like magazines or newspapers. People really like that. They,
Wow.
yeah, they enjoy seeing some. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
the real high-end collectors of books want them as pristine as possible, right? But so a couple of other things are, this is very specific also, but feed sack fabric. So, before and during the Depression, seed and flour and sugar, things like that came in fabric, like
Mhm.
calico fabric. And women would then use that fabric to make clothing or curtains, things like that. So those feed sacks or even scraps, I sell scraps of feed sacks on Etsy.
Wow.
Yeah, for really good monies. I just recently found my very first feed sack. You know what, Dana? I have one right here.
Oh, please. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. So interesting.
Here is an example. So this one is still sewn.
Huh.
It's a bag. It's sewn
Yeah.
on three sides. It's open
I
at the
thought they were
top.
like burlap.
Well, nowadays, like for coffee and things like that, they are, and they would have been at one point. I mean, before this, they were a heavy, rough cotton, and you
Wow.
still find those out. Sometimes they have stripes on them,
Oh,
like a grain sack fabric. Um, but these were popular for a really long time, and
wow.
they the companies the companies that made the fabric that the mills bought to put their
Okay.
product in
Hmm.
started producing booklets with ideas and patterns in them for women to use to make clothing and curtains and things like that. And
Wow.
then they started holding competitions at state fairs and county fairs for the best, product, whatever, they made from the grain sacks. Yeah, I have a whole article on my website
Oh,
about feed
definitely.
sacks.
Definitely. For those on YouTube, go ahead and scroll down and see a link to that article.
Yeah, it's a fascinating history. So the last couple of things I would say would be painted signs, like for businesses,
Oh,
and not signs that you paint yourself, although those sell also, but that I don't look for those. Yourself meaning modern stenciled signs.
oh,
And then I would add good artwork. I don't mean expensive artwork. I mean like attractive artwork. Like just because it's original and it's painted doesn't mean it's saleable. You want it to be
okay.
attractive. So
So
those
what's
are the things.
attractive? What's attractive?
Wow. Okay. I mean, there's just all kinds of like artistic principles
Okay.
that you start thinking about, like composition.
Okay.
Right? So pleasing composition, pleasing,
Attractive to the eye.
attractive to the eye,
That's
pleasing
what you mean.
colors, pleasing scenes, or pleasing subject matter.
Okay.
Could be a still life, could be a portrait, could be a landscape, but because people aren't generally don't want to hang unattractive things in their house,
Of
right?
course, of course.
And that's a subjective thing, a
Okay.
subjective question, but you it's like anything else that you sell in the antique market, you learn as you go.
Right.
Right, you
Right.
find one thing that people really like and it sells quickly, and so your brain stores that information, and then when you see something later on you compare it to that thing, and then
Yes.
eventually you have a huge catalog in your head of what might sell.
And what might sell, right? Because then the markets change, you know?
Constantly.
So Diana, tell us about one of your best buys ever.
Okay. Well, that's easy. Um, Quite a while ago now, I picked up a painting in Albany. I live in a suburb of Albany, New York, and I picked up a painting that I found attractive. I didn't have to think about it a lot though, because it was $1. So I picked
Okay.
it up for $1. I brought it home and I stuck it in a corner somewhere. And
Okay.
several years after that, when we were getting ready to move into our current home, I came across it again, looking at it. Now, by that time, I had sold quite a lot of art. And so looking at it again, I was like really intrigued. I turned it over. I saw that it was dated 1927 and there was a location. It was Lehigh, Pennsylvania. So
Hmm.
by that point, I had learned a little bit about the Pennsylvania Impressionist school
Oh.
that was founded in the New Hope area of Pennsylvania in Bucks County. And Lehigh County is adjacent to Bucks County. So that sort of like got me thinking, and I was able to locate the name of a gallery in New Hope that specialized in Pennsylvania Impressionists. And so I can't remember, I must have sent an email and a picture asking him, what it was, a
Mhm.
male gallery owner, what he thought about it. And it was signed Melville Stark, which when I researched Pennsylvania Impressionism, his name didn't pop up. But the
Okay.
gallery owner let me know that Stark was part of the school. He was sort of part of the latter end of that period. And I was also concerned because it looked like the signature had been etched into the
Oh.
oil. Yeah, into the oil paint. And so that seemed really weird to me. But he informed me that after he had died, his son etched his name into any pieces that he hadn't signed before he died, and that
Oh.
that didn't affect the value of the painting.
How interesting.
Yeah, it really was. So, it would, and the painting, so the painting, the Pennsylvania Impressionists are like the French Impressionists, and they love light, and they do a lot of outdoor painting and outdoor scenes. Um, so this was a painting, it was a river scene with trees and like a house or a barn or something like in the background. And I didn't find it like particularly beautiful. It was a
Okay.
little bit muddy, but there was something there, obviously, that attracted me because that's why I spent the $1. So anyway, right there on the phone, he offered me $1,500 for it, and I said, sold.
Yeah.
It didn't even
What?
matter to me if it was worth more than that. I'm like happy
Yeah.
to let someone else make money off of,
Right.
my find. That was like
Of
enough for
course.
me.
Wow. That is so cool.
Yeah,
Yeah. I
it was
think it's
fun.
great. That's great. I know I like it when you can make money and let someone else make money,
Yeah,
and you can't get greedy in this industry.
no,
If you
no.
get greedy, you
My
lose.
friend Robin, who got me into the business, always said that like the green in your hand is worth more than anything. She always said, the bird in your hand is worth more than two in the bush. So take the opportunity when it arrives. For example, I bought a beautiful quilt again in Pennsylvania and was holding on to it like to get the highest, dollar value.
Right,
I brought
right.
it to an antique center. They told me what they thought the value was. I thought it was more, or not an antique center, an auction house. They told
Okay.
me what they thought it was worth. I thought it was worth more, so I left it with them with a
Reserve.
reserve that was pretty high, and it didn't sell. So I took it back home. When we lived in England, we had a mouse problem in the area where the quilt was, and now there's a big hole
Oh,
in my beautiful
lesson learned.
quilt.
That's what you get.
Yeah. Yeah. I should have sold it.
That's a good story. That's a good example.
Yeah.
Very good example.
Keep it
Oh,
moving. Keep the merchandise moving out of
right.
your possession as quickly
That's
as
right.
possible.
Yep. I like to say move it in, move it out. Move
Yep.
on to the next thing. You're going to make more money off something else.
Yes. I agree 100%.
Okay. Any final words you'd like to share?
A lot of people are hesitant to get into the business. I encourage people to, if they really love antiques or they have a lot of antiques, to, dip their toe in. I would recommend dip your toe in possibly to something like Facebook Marketplace because it's very simple. I love selling from an antique booth because I enjoy interacting with both my, merchandise and staging it, but also interacting with other antique sellers, with
Yep.
my antique shop owner, with customers while I'm there. So I really enjoy that. But as far as like where you can make the most money, I would recommend Etsy.
Okay.
I know you can, make a lot of money on eBay, but I recommend Etsy
Okay.
because I feel it's a very friendly platform. It's a
Okay.
very friendly place to sell antiques. People are enjoy getting to know the people that they're buying from. It's kinder, I think, than eBay is. More personal in the sense that like sellers usually have a picture of themselves in their
Hmm.
shop front and information about their shop that you can
Hmm.
access. So you sort of feel like like I said, like the sellers. Also, I feel like the interface with the back end of the business is much uh, easier than eBay. First of
Okay.
all, it rarely changes. So in 10 years, there's only been one change. Um, and it was recently, and it was a big change, but it was not hard to adapt to. Where
Okay.
eBay, I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, Dana, is changes every year.
Yeah. Yeah. My beloved eBay. I understand. No, I totally understand. And I appreciate I like getting information from all types of sellers, and that's what makes podcasts and education valuable because we need to learn about options. eBay's not for everybody. Etsy's not for everybody, but I think that it's good to dabble and try different platforms. And
Definitely.
some people love Macari and they won't do eBay or Etsy. So it also depends on the types of products and what's comfortable for you as a
Right.
seller.
Right. I agree.
Yeah.
100%.
So, but I wish you much more continued success. I love learning about antiques. I love selling them and learning about them, and that's the joy of being a treasure hunter because you get to learn as
Yeah.
you're hunting.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me on, Dana, queen of eBay, queen
And you
of
could be
selling.
the queen of Etsy. How's
Uh,
that?
I'll take it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It was my pleasure to share with you my special friend Diana. She shared some great information. I hope you stop by her blog and learn from her, continue to learn from her. Until next time, I'm Dana Crawford, the Power Selling Mom, and you're listening to the Power Selling Podcast. Thanks so much to List Perfectly for being a sponsor of the Power Selling Podcast. It is my go-to resource tool for cross-posting, cross-listing across multiple channels. You can learn more by visiting listperfectly.com. Until next time, have an awesome online selling day. Bye.